Hey rail fans, Train Guy here again, and today doing a stream on Sandpatch Grade. And this service in particular is one I had a bit of trouble getting started first couple of times because there's a wee bug with the game. This will show you how to get around that. So to do the service, what's it called, U876. This is one that if you start it from the menu in the cab, you'll find that there is a dead locomotive sitting on the switch you need to use to get out of the yard at the start. So if you just start on foot 5 minutes early, well, 7 minutes early actually is probably the better one. You can start 2 minutes or 7 minutes early. 2 minutes isn't quite long enough. Start at Cumberland turntable with 7 minutes to go. That'll buy you plenty of time to have a wee stroll over to the waiting train. The only downside is it means you're stuck with the SD40 that it defaults to. So spawn on foot just outside the engine shed. We'll take a walk over the turntable. I think this all works, by the way. We're not going to spend very long playing with it because time. Which is pretty cool. Right, we need to go and find our train, which is parked over yonder way. Jog a wee bit. Oh, nice. Right, excellent. It spawned with an ACW 4400 at the head of the train. Lovely. Usually gives you an SD40. But that's fine, I'll take that. So, we've got about 5 minutes to go. Plenty of time. We'll just go and claim this for ourselves. And just sit in the engineer's seat and click begin. So scheduled to start 14:42, so we've got a bit of time now. That's great. I thought this always spawned in an SD40 because I've done it a couple of times just to test it all out. Even better that we've got this because the speed control comes in handy later on. So now that we've claimed it, what do we need to do? Number lights and short hood lead. Hi Ratifus, welcome. Keeps you fit this game. Yeah, certainly does. Awful lot of walking around in this game. Ali Zurich, still on the fence about Train Sim World 2. Yeah, I know what you mean. That's always been, I mean, I've been playing with simulators since the 1980s. It's always been like this. You get a base pack to begin with, and then it gets built on over the next few years. I mean, considering we'd normally get one route for what we paid for this, not really going to complain too much. But no, I get why some people are not convinced by it. So we've just set up the rear locomotive. We've just turned off all those switches there, and the number lights and the main lights are controlled from the front cab. So yeah, I guess as well. I mean, I'm saying I think it's worth it. I've got the complete preserved collection banked already, so I'm maybe looking at it a little bit sort of differently to somebody who hasn't. But I've certainly spent a lot more money on games that give me a lot less entertainment, that's for sure. Yeah, the high speed stuff is really good as well. What did I not do here? Oh yeah. Where's my generator switch? So we just want to make sure the generator's on. The other two should already be on. The gauge lights are just for the lights down here, and you can't really see them during the day anyway, so they're a bit pointless. And we want the engineer's screen. Cut it in, set it to lead, save the changes. Cannot tell you how happy I am that this is the lead locomotive. Get those windows open as well, so we're going to want to hear the noise. Still a couple of minutes to go. What we'll do is we'll pop the independent brake on just now, and we'll let the train brakes off so that plenty of time for them to release. Can you increase the gauge brightness? Probably, but the only gauges that you need to light up are these little lights down here that you never look at. It doesn't affect everything else is on this screen here, so Cheat used the keyboard to pop the alerter on, because confession time, I still haven't found where the switch actually is. So the reason for spawning in the cab as well, we'll jump to the drone camera quickly, is if you don't spawn on foot, if you spawn in your cab, I think it's down here, there's a helper pair coming back down the mountain at the moment, and they're due to arrive at Cumberland in a minute or two as we're leaving. If you spawn... Hi Zoshan, Harris, good to see you, man. If you spawn in your cab, it'll spawn that train in, stopped on this switch here, I think it is, with no crew on board, so it's not moving and there's nobody driving it. That kind of stuffs you, because the only way to get it out the way is to move it yourself, and as soon as you take control of that one, you give up control of the one you were in before, and it drives off as soon as the way is clear. So spawn on foot at Cumberland turntable. 2 minutes isn't really enough time to do all the setup. 7 minutes is plenty. Love the weather in effect, by the way, on this. It looks like it's properly been, so it looks like it's already been up and down the mountain a couple of times today. Sometimes they just looked a bit too clean in Train Sim World 1. So we're just about ready to go. So the train brake should be more or less completely off by now. We've given it over a minute to empty. So as soon as I release these, we'll be underway. And with this thing heading the train, it's going to be completely hassle-free climb, because the coal cars themselves are empties that we're taking up to be filled. So the way, not very much at all. I mean, there's still a couple of thousand tons of train behind us, but compared to when we're coming back down the hill, it weighs about the same as a bag of crisps. So there's that helper pair that gets stuck on the switch that we need. Let me just check the way ahead. Yep, that helper pair spawns right on top of that switch there. Brakes out again, so I knew that the junction was far enough ahead that I could cruise along and still sort anything that needed. Yeah, I think the livery designer is. I think they're kind of reluctant to give us a full livery designer because they keep talking about the potential licensing issues that we've got in their live streams. So it would be cool, but how extensive it's going to be, I don't know. So at this point, it is worth sometimes just doing a quick points check. It should all be set for us, but there's no harm just double checking because I have been trapped by this a couple of times. U876-A, High Train Guy, wanted to buy TSW2 for PS4, but reading some comments about bugs and the game not loading properly. I personally have not had any problems loading the game. I've found a couple of bugs here and there. I can't claim it's a completely bug-free and polished product by any stretch of the imagination. But that said, you know, I've still already spent over 100 hours playing it. I mean, it's one of these things. If you like trains, you're going to have some fun. You will have fun playing this. If you don't, you might not. But then everybody has their own sort of idea of what they're prepared to accept as being an acceptable amount of issues and things with these. Like I keep saying, I'm a really old fart who remembers simulators. You were lucky to get them to work on your computer. End of story. So I maybe have a higher tolerance for things not quite working properly than I maybe should. Some would argue. If you see it in a sale, I mean, what I would say when it comes to the value of Train Sim World 2 is that what you're paying for the standard edition is what you would normally pay for one route, and what you're paying for the deluxe edition is what you would normally pay for one route and a locomotive. And I guess the more of the preserved content you already own, if you bought a lot of stuff for Train Sim World 1, then that probably adds to the value because you'll be able to use all that stuff as well, including in the scenario editors and things like that. So it's not an answer. It's not a question with a dead easy answer, I'm afraid. It kind of depends on what you've already got and how low your expectations are. Hi Jaden Brown, welcome. Good to see you, man. I think what Ratifus is saying there about some of the glitches with passengers and stuff as well. Your experience with glitches will depend on how you play the game too. I rarely leave cab view most of the time. I try and do it a bit more when I'm streaming. So I don't necessarily notice a lot of the odd things going on the platform 300 yards behind where I'm sat because I'm just sitting ready to close my doors again. Kind of thing. I think I've seen one passenger doing something odd the whole time I've been playing it, and it was in the underground while I was waiting on a train coming, and it was the standing on top of the sign thing they were doing. So this first stretch of the track crawling out of Cumberland is a bit slow, but then we'll be up to 50 fairly soon, and then stretch the legs a bit. So this is Cumberland, Maryland, for anyone who's not been reading up about the route or hasn't seen it before, it's a pretty cool little route actually. I was reading about this route. It's got some of the steepest gradients in US railroads. We start off at this end in Maryland, and we're crossing the Allegheny Mountains into Pennsylvania. Apparently it's a fairly famous, almost iconic railway because of the gradients and stuff on it. It's not just CSX that run along here either, but it is in the sim obviously. And it basically winds its way up past a few towns in the mountains. And it follows, more or less follows the path of a river that's named, I forget, Cumberland River or something like that. It passes, or it follows the path of. Talking about the new routes in the chat there, I am so excited about TGV. Oh, TGV is going to be awesome. And I see also on the road map there's the high-speed southeast. I take it that's the first stretch of the Eurostar they're talking about. Like the stretch between London and the tunnel. HS1, that's the ferry. HS1 is just the link between the tunnel itself and London, isn't it? I think the trains that use that line, they're mostly... They're given the classification as 800 by tops, but they're basically just ICE3s and TGVs, I think. Anything high speed is good by me. Of course, the one that I would love to see is the Japanese Shinkansen, but I think that might be some ways off. Reading between the lines, some of what they were saying in recent streams, I'm not banking on. Not banking on it anytime soon. Right, so we're now cleared to leave the, basically that's us now leaving Cumberland facility altogether. Should probably have the outside camera on a bit more, because it is actually pretty cooler in here. I love how you're just driving like smack through the middle of this little town with a big huge ass train. How much disruption must these things cause? I mean, they're fucking huge. The 4400 does not have the bell slaved into the horn either, which is such an annoying thing on the ST40 and GT38. It's noisy, isn't it? So we're now in a 25 mph zone, but it's going to be a while before we can actually pick that speed up. In fact, I should probably try and cut some off again. So the gratuitous horn use there, I've been told several times, and I have read in a few places as well, the rule over there is too long a short and a long as you approach a crossing. With the final long as you go over the crossing. So, there. Although, yeah, I do sometimes just mash it gratuitously because it is a mighty, mighty horn. It's a mighty, mighty motor as well. Yeah, I've got no idea what they're like. I know that over here we've got like quiet zones and there's regulations around time, but I figure they don't have any other real environmental rules over there, so they probably don't have any noise environmental rules either. So just whack it whenever you like. But I mean, certainly, if you go all jokes aside, even on like YouTube and that, I've seen videos on YouTube of these things going through like really quiet towns at stupid o'clock in the morning. It's still dark and they've got the lights on and the horn absolutely whizzing away because they huffed it. Turn the bell on. But there are no more neighbours for quite a while now. The odd, very small sort of, but not even villages, they're barely even hamlets up here. I think Hindman is actually the next big town we get to. And then you go to a place called Garrett. I think we go to a place called Ellerslie maybe as well. I can remember some of the names of them, I can't remember the order they all come in yet. How long's the full route? In a straight line it's only about 23 miles, but to drive it, it's close on 60 miles of track. Pull the map right out. So from there, which is Cumberland Yard, up to, is it Rockwood it's called, which is up here. That's about 26 it's somewhere in the region of 24, 25 miles in a straight line, but because the track weaves around so much, and this whole section up here is like 35 and then 25 mile an hour, it's a good 2 hours to do the full length of the route. And it's not all nice and flat and easy going like this. Oh yeah, I'd say you get your money's worth, man, from this, especially if you're on console, because we've never had this route before. There's a lot here. There's a bunch of switching activities as well. If you select the GP38, it's got a whole ton of switching services that are only available to it. So there's quite a mix of things to do. Mohammed Mortada, why doesn't Train Sim World 2 work for me? I'm afraid I couldn't tell you, my friend. The best thing to do would probably be to put a ticket in with Dovetail Sport. No, I'm not a professional driver, dude. I'm just somebody with a bit too much spare time on my hands sometimes. You'd have to be crazy to allow me anywhere near these things. So we should be able to pick up to 35 very soon. Open. That's usually the dude in that chair has disappeared, but the job of that dude over there is basically to keep track of shit like signals and speed limits and things. Right, pick it up a bit now. Thing with this train is it is actually quite a nice one to practice the route with. Those nice empty coal cars, they weigh enough that you know you're pulling a train, but they're light enough that they don't really hold you back. That slightly, never mind. So I think this is still Maryland we're in, but I think by the time we get to the highway, we'll get some radio. customs for a little while. Yeah, problem with it not working is that can be a, I don't know if you're on PC or what, but especially with PC it can often be a thing specific to your own rig. I remember that well from my own days as a PC gamer. But, at least dovetailing theory, they know what they put in the game and what's likely to be causing whatever an issue is when you see people saying it doesn't work on their console, that confuses me, because in theory they've all got the same equipment. That always bothers me a little bit. My first suspicion that it's a console is that it's probably a knackered hard drive sector or something like that. Sometimes just reformatting your console and reinstalling it will solve a problem like that. Especially if it's an older machine. I had to do that a couple of times with my PlayStation 3 back in the day. But I'm afraid I can't be more helpful than that, because I'm really not a techie kind of guy. And certainly I'm not affiliated with dovetail in any way, shape or form. Auto racks going past us. There's a fair amount of traffic on this route actually. It feels quite populated. I do really like this flat and open section. Oh, it definitely, ZG68, yeah, it definitely passes okay. You sound like you know your way around Train Sim World 2020. If you had fun with that, you're going to have fun with this. It's more of the same with extra stuff. The adhesion's pretty cool. I've not got the weather or anything turned on, but the new physics are pretty good. Unfortunately, that's not something you can really see so obviously on a street, especially when I haven't turned on the sort of weather conditions that would create that. But, I can promise you that trying to bring a 6,000 ton train down this hill in a downpour is actually not as much fun as I thought it was going to be. It was and it wasn't. It was kind of scary. The radio noises are cool. Yeah, I think your dudes, if you mean where do the guys go that are sitting next to you that keep disappearing, I think it's when you cycle your external cameras. I thought that last one that I thought was a crossing was a bridge. That happens occasionally. I'd lost track of the whistle boards about a mile back, to be honest with you. Right, this is the point where you do actually have to start kind of concentrating a little bit. We're more or less uphill all the way from now on, but with a couple of speed limit changes in there, it levels off slightly at times before steepening again. So at different points, different parts of the train are going to be climbing the hill at different angles. So gravity is going to be pulling them slightly differently, and it can all get a little unpredictable sometimes. Although again, that problem's not quite so bad with this particular service. The empties before. Matthew Guilford, welcome mate. Hello, enjoying Sandpatch on console finally? Yes, yes we are. Absolutely love it. TSW2 Scotland, hello mate, welcome. Southeast mate, in the Edinburgh-ish area. That there's a helper pair. Some of the manifest trains that come up here, they need another pair of locomotives at the back to give them a shove. If you've played main Spec Art Band, you'll probably know all about banking. Same dealie, and you can actually drive those empty pairs back down the mountain as well. You know, a selectable service. Yeah, it will be about 3 years, Matthew. I think this was one of was this not the first one they released as a full route back in the PC? I'm sure this was available to PC players before it had even been announced the game was coming to console. So I think it's been even longer than 3 years, probably closer to 4 now. Ah, right, Jaden's asking what the whistle boards look like. We'll keep a little eye open for one. You see them at the side of the track. I think this might be one coming up here. Yeah, these things here that have got a letter W on them, the grubby looking thing, that's telling you you're coming up to something that should be whistled at, usually a crossing. That's all it's there for, is just to tell you, start making noise. I think on Peninsula Corridor, the same thing is represented by a letter X instead of a W. What we do need to watch for somewhere around Hindman is we're going to have to slow it down a bit, but what we don't want to be doing is braking too much when we hit the gradient, because we're going to hit a fairly steep hill, and normally with a heavy loaded train you want to maintain your momentum as you go up there. trick is to kind of try and preemptively be at the speed power already in again, and then try and hold it as much as you can. More of a problem for the intermodals and the manifests and the auto racks than it is for the empty coal wagons. I can't remember if this is the last 50 mile an hour thing coming up or not. We are going uphill all the way, so losing that speed is actually quite easy. It only gives you about 3/4 of a mile to do it, but because the gradient's already started, we'll let the power out of it just now though. That one was gratuitous. So there's a couple of whistle boards in sequence here, just telling me there's a couple of crossings coming up ahead. I'm just going to use the dynamic brake to lose some of this. Those old tutorial videos, TSW2 Scotland, the only thing I would say about those is they are very, very old. And I can't guarantee that I didn't make some mistakes in those. It is very possible. We've learned as we go along on this this channel. Some of the tutorial videos I did on your post just above about my old signal tutorials, they are very old videos that I did back in the early days, so some of the information might be excuse me, might be just a little bit out. Fair warning, I've never been back and watched them all though. Right, so now we've lost that speed a bit earlier than we maybe needed to, but it sets us up nicely with the power already down as we go into that gradient, 1.5%. That's a pretty big ask for most trains. Most trains are going to be full power in for most of the way up here. Yeah, one of these days I'm going to get over there and put some requests in as well, I think. I am a member of the forums, I just never get around to going on the things. Fife Circle would be cool, I'd love to see that, or maybe I'd love to see the East Coast Main Line, Edinburgh up to Dundee maybe, but I think they need to be better at draw distances before they try doing something like the Forth Bridge. I'm not sure how that would turn out. Or give us the East Coast running down towards Berwick or something. Newcastle's maybe a bit of a stretch, but Berwick's not that far. You're talking in the region of Peninsula Corridor distance, yeah. Or Edinburgh to Glasgow would be cool, but I don't think it's quite as fast as the line heading south. The token system, man. Oh, Mate, they can barely get bog standard Victorian signals to work. And I mean that in the kindest possible way. I love the game, but yeah, that might be a bit of an ask. If they had multiplayer in the game. You never know. We might get the Glasgow Underground as well now that they've done an underground route. They do keep saying once they've made the assets for something, they want to use as much of that knowledge again for something else. I know that the trains are different on the Glasgow Tube, but how different can it be from the other one? The Glasgow one goes round in a circle, so you can just ride round and round and round and round it. There wouldn't be any mucking about trying to figure out how to turn it round and send it back at the end. Yeah, Glasgow, one of the Glasgow stations out to one of any number of little places up and down the west coast could be really nice as well. Just about any stretch of railway, you know, north of where I am would pretty much make a nice picturesque route, certainly. So we've not got out the cabin and well, have a wee look around. I mean, speaking of nice looking routes, I have to say that I actually really do like this one. I've got this one with the autumn palette coming on. Done the coal run last night, got to the end. Oh, someone chapped your door. No! I've never run a red light because of that, but I have run plenty of red lights at the end on the service before. I feel your pain. Samson, hi mate, good to see you, dude. No, I didn't make this. This is one that's in service mode. It doesn't work in service mode properly. You have to spawn on foot, but this is a pre-existing one. All my efforts with the scenario creator so far have been pretty crap, to be honest with you, because I need to sit down and figure out timings and things like that, and I just frankly haven't found myself with the time that I was willing to give to doing that yet. I will get round to doing it. At some point my curiosity will get the better of me and I'll have a proper rummage around in there. Jetbacker, hello mate, welcome. Is it a different gauge on the Glasgow? Right. It's not something I know very much about. other than it generally smells of pish anytime I've been on it. But when it comes to the technical side of things, nah. Have a bit of head out the cab action. Gotta go to the bar. That's always a good excuse for everything, man. Go for it. Fill your boots. Yeah, it's edgy. I really do like the scenery on this route. It feels different to all the other routes, if that makes any sense. Like the British routes, they all kind of feel like like a British route. The German routes all kind of have the same sort of basic aesthetic and feel to them. This feels completely like its own thing, and I think that makes a big part of the difference. Oh, she's sitting on the wrong side. Here we go. Just give it a bit of a hoop. Pick that speed back up again. Last time I did this was with a pair of SD40s. And it was still, they still had enough power to do it, but nothing like as easy as doing it with a 4400. Don't have scenery like that in Manchester. Maybe not, mate, but I tell you what, the scenery between here and there is absolutely cracking. It's a journey I've made a couple of times myself. Right, so we're coming up to Fairhope, which is here. We're going all the way over here. That's where Shaw Mine is, down that branch line. So we're going to stop it on this bend, and we have to reverse it uphill and down the branch line. Oh, tree! Yeah, you have to reverse it uphill and then sort of uphill and downhill at the same time because it's that long, and you have to connect it up to a waiting helper locomotive, hopefully not going so fast that you knock the damn thing off the rails, which totally didn't happen in one of the practice runs. And the great thing about having this thing at the head of the train rather than the ST40 I was expecting is if we decide to do the lowdown, this thing can do the pull through with its low speed control on. You still have to watch it with low speed control. I'm probably using it wrong, but you still have to be ready to catch the speed yourself manually. But it's much easier than trying to do it just with the Jeep or the SD, where you're purely relying on your own lack of skill to, in my case, to keep the thing at a steady 2 miles an hour. What actually happened was there was a lot of juddering up to 4 or 5 miles an hour, then sitting still for ages, and then moving another 30 or 40 yards really awkwardly and stopping again. It was horrible. So the new physics are wonderful, but they make it really hard to do some things. Yeah, man, down through the lakes, and depending where exactly you came from, where you're going, you might find yourself. When I was going down a couple of years ago, I was going over the Pennines every time. It was great. Loved the journey down. Just a shame it was a Riva that were running the damn things at the time, but never mind. Right, so next up is Manst. 8 miles is going to take us longer than you would think to cover, by the way. This is probably the longest stretch of the trip, because it's all going to be at 25 to 35 miles an hour. Apparently a very popular spot with rail fans, because it's right on it's got this sort of horseshoe loop up here. Is a very popular train spotting place. After that, we'll be thinking about getting ready to be switched over onto the oncoming tracks and stuff. But at the speeds we're doing, it's really easy. There's nothing complicated. You should do a stream, Samson. Go for it, man. It is literally as easy as just sitting talking to yourself. And sometimes people join in and it's cool. Amazing how much you learn about the game as well, because I've learned just as much from people dropping into the streams as I've been able to put into the streams. It's great, do it. You'd think Manchester to Liverpool would be an obvious one, really, wouldn't it? I mean, literally the first fucking railway. They aren't more historically significant than that. I can only assume that there are licensing issues with whoever's got that part of the network just now. Glasgow Central and run all sorts of routes out there. That's a brilliant idea. And honestly, I don't think there's any reason they couldn't do it, because they kind of already have. Hagen appears in 2 DLCs now, I think. They've not linked the routes up, but there are now at least 2 routes out there that beginner end at Hagen. So the idea of building one station and then building multiple routes off it, why not? I don't know, Ratty. I think maybe they're listening and just pretending they thought of it. Paddington doesn't count. It does appear in 2 routes, but it's 2 distinctly separate parts of it. But, I would argue that the concept is already there. What would be cool would be if they could link stuff up in the future. I have a feeling that's something that probably won't happen for all sorts of reasons, but it would be cool. Right, I wonder if the PC crowd have found a way to do it. The PC people are bound to have found a way to connect the Hagen rooms by now, surely. That's the one thing I do miss about simming on a PC is the community have always found solutions. Keyboard makes all the difference, man, doesn't it? It's a game changer. Honestly, don't think I can go back to. I usually don't like that sort of controller snobbery. You know, oh, you can't play a racing game if you don't have a steering wheel. Well, sometimes I frankly can't be arsed for dragging it out and setting it up. You know, normally not a fan of controller snobbery, but in the case of this game and Elite Dangerous is the other one, I would argue the case. It is almost essential to get the most out of the game. Rail Driver is on the roadmap. I don't know if it's Rail Driver for every platform, but so far they have always consistently tried their best to give everybody the same experience. So my takeaway from all that would be that if they're going to do it for one, they would want to be able to do it for all. Whether it comes to that in the end, I don't know, but I did see it on the roadmap, and they wouldn't be the only company. I mean, I've got a steering wheel, I've got a flight stick and all sorts of crap from a PlayStation, so it's not without precedent to have those kind of things. I wouldn't rule it out entirely. I wouldn't hold my breath for it either, but I wouldn't rule it out completely. I've not really been watching the signals as they've been coming up here, and I really should be because they're not always green, I've discovered. So 6.6 miles to Mans. We've done 1.5 miles in the last, I don't know, about 8 or 9 minutes. So this is the really, really tortuous section here. ZG68 is a mode to do using a keyboard. What the keyboard gives you, ZG, is it gives you access to all the controls that PC players can use, with the exception, weirdly enough, of oh! Does it work now? Oh, hell! Right, I was going to say with the exception of one of the brake keys, it gives you access to the PC controls, but that seems to work in this game. I've not noticed that before. Right, so the keyboard gives you access to all the PC controls, essentially. It means that I can do this, and swap cameras, just at the press of a button. If I want to see how shit the frame rate is, I can press a button and there it is, just under the top right hand corner there. You can operate your power handle. I'm currently pressing keyboard buttons for that. Where it makes a massive difference is the German trains, because it lets you control the AFB or the tempomat. You know that controller that you normally need like a third pair of hands, like a second pair of hands for? It makes it so much easier when you've got the keyboard. That's where sort of the controller snobbery that comes in, because it literally completely changes the way you'll operate the trains in a lot of cases. And any old keyboard will do as well. I mean, the one I'm using, I picked up for about £5, £6, Curry's PC World. Admittedly, that was a couple of years ago now, but I mean, literally just walked in and asked them for the cheapest keyboard they had. Stuff like the way I can swing the cameras around quite quickly and what have you. I'm doing all that with the keyboard as well. Yeah, you just plug it into the USB port, mate. I've got my keyboard in port 1 and my controller cable in port 2. I think Bluetooth will work as well. Oh, there's a whistle board. No worries, man. Yeah, lack of options on the controller, man. I kind of think Ratifist that when they made that new control scheme, they basically assumed that more and more people are plugging keyboards into the game now. And I think it is becoming more and more common. Oh, speeding again. I'm not used to being able to break the speed limit coming up here. Normally you're doing well to get within touching distance of it. That was also, that train we just passed, going back to the amount of traffic on this route, that was, I think, there was one on the way out the yard, sure, wasn't there? Yes, the helpers, and one at the bottom of the hill, so that's like the 4th or 5th train that we just passed, at least, and I'm fairly certain it's not the last thing we see either, so there is quite a lot going on this route. And usually when you're doing the switching stuff down in the yard at Cumberland as well, there will be at least one big train goes past you during the activity, usually more, because it's quite long. So this route doesn't suffer from the feeling off the empty route syndrome that Bakerloo doesn't really. I mean, the Bakerloo, the overground section can feel a bit empty sometimes. The underground, it's too closed in to really get a true feeling of how much stuff's on the line. I think that the Hauptstrecke, no, not Hauptstrecke, the other one, the Schnellfahrstrecke, that's nowhere near enough stuff on it just now. I suspect they've left some layers free, because again there is DLC for that on the roadmap. It would be lovely if they even used some of the rear sig stuff to populate a couple of those layers just now until the new stuff comes out. Because from what I understand of how the building timetables and stuff goes, that capacity is already there, they've just not put anything in it. There's no way there can only be like 3 trains on the line at any one time. That's just not right. This is a fairly gentle part of the gradient. This is a decent part if you've lost speed on the way up. Sometimes get a little bit of it back here. But it mostly seems to depend on the composition of your traction. If you've got all SD40s and Jeeps, forget it. If you've got an ACW or two in the mix, you might be okay. Bring up the service table. You mean this one here? No, you can't scroll that one. What you have to do is you have to go to this one in the pause menu. And the reason you can't scroll that is because they removed the functionality. Essentially, they could only put so many things onto the control pad, and when they were deciding what to trim away, that was one of the things that got trimmed away. That was 2 or 3 streams ago that Matt was in, did they talked about that briefly. I think Rail Driver is only for PC. Could well be. I mean, I would like to think they could. There's no technical reason they couldn't. I think if they don't do it, because the hardware is the same. I mean, I can plug my HOTAS or my steering wheel into a PC and it'll read them just fine. The issue is Sony's lockout chips and the eye-watering amount of money that they think they should get from these third-party peripherals. That's going to be what stops it. Hagen is on, Bruce ignored, and Rainbow Ralston. Yeah. That's that would be something that we would see for the cassette. Because those two routes together come to a fairly significantly long route. Rainbow Ralston's longer than I think it feels because it's all straight lines at fairly decent speed. Right, so we're still 3.5 miles from Mans. So we've done what? 2 miles, 2.5 miles in the last 10 minutes. So going back to earlier about how long the route is, I mean in a straight line we're, let's see, we're only about halfway there. We're more than halfway to where we're going. If we were going the full length of the route, we're only about halfway up it, or halfway along it rather. So the actual distance again isn't that huge, but just by the nature of the route, it's long. The only other route that I've got north of 2 hours on has been Peninsula Corridor. Just my wife good night for a whole year. Yeah. I have to admit, I do like my toys, my bits of add-on hardware. I used to go silly with that stuff back in the day on PC. Shudder to think how much money I spent on all that stuff as well, to be honest with you, but it's fun. Tell you what I did see on, there's a dude on, I think I might have seen him on Facebook, some dude in like, I can't remember what country he's in, he's in Eastern Europe somewhere, he's built himself a custom controller for the console, but it looks like a rail driver, but the dude's made it himself. Obviously this guy knows a thing or two, he knows his way around the soldering iron and the circuit board, that's obvious. I don't know how difficult or easy it would be to find on Google, find that guy or find him on. I imagine if you're in any Facebook groups or train simulator, someone somewhere will have posted that because I saw it doing the rounds a few weeks ago. So it's technically possible. If you had the sort of know-how and you were looking for a project to fill a bit of time. Hell, you can try the guy down, he'll probably tell you how to build it. These guys usually do. They know they can't sell it. In my experience, things like this, because I've had custom bits of kit for flight simulators and stuff in the distant past, you know. Stuff that you kind of had to assemble yourself for legal reasons. Generally, I found the people who came up with these sort of devices were more than happy to share how they've done it. Not a huge amount to see on this stretch of the route. This is probably I don't want to call it the dullest bit. It's probably the most featureless from the driver's point of view. I didn't realise you could play with the volume control on that. Building a train cab in the living room, yeah. Seen people doing it with flight sims as well. I never had like the full cockpit, but I did have. I had the pedals and I had the yoke and I had a throttle. It was a quadrant, but you could lock the levers off so that you could have one lever or two levers or three levers, one in the middle and one on either side, or four separate levers. And I had what the hell do you call those things again? It's got a name. It's the multifunction thing in front of the pilots. It's got all the controls for the autopilot. I had one of those, so that instead of having to click on things on the screen, I could just turn the knobs and rotate the switches to the settings that I wanted. That was awesome. And like 3 monitors in front of me. Them was the days. And then I'd have like another laptop. I had another computer that was just there to run like Batson. I think you had to run on the same PC, but I had everything else, like all the weather programs and planning software and shit like that open on another machine dedicated to it. It was insane. Train cab would be cool though. Train cab would be much easier to do as well, wouldn't it? I reckon. Ooh, signal. Dun dun dun. You can tell by my panic leaping into action here that we've got something coming up ahead of us. The next signal is miles away. If I remember rightly, this one's going to slow us down a little bit for crossing onto the wrong running line, the oncoming line. But again, any speed limit reduction up here is going to be really easy to do because we're going uphill, so you don't really need to panic. You've got plenty of time to react. What do you need to do to find out what buttons to press on the keyboard for the functions? If you open up a Google tab and type Train Sim World Steam, or Train Sim World 2 Steam, that'll take you to the Steam page for the game, and you can download the manuals from there, and they've got all the controls somewhere in the back page. Actually, the Train Sim World 2020 manual is the one to grab, because the one for 2 is absolutely garbage. It doesn't have all the controls in it yet, believe it or not. But you just grab them off the Steam page. I think each route has its own manual as well, so stuff like specific things to do with signal and things like that are covered in there, but I think the basic controls are in every single iteration of it. Yeah, something they're not very good at doing is including the manual would be a start. But plenty of games, if you press your options button on the menu, it will give you an option to go look at documentation. Something they are pretty crap at doing, and to be fair, they've acknowledged that they need to improve this. They're pretty crap at giving us all the information we need, or even telling us where to find it. So you'll notice that I haven't passed a caution signal. I'm still trundling along at a merry old 25 here. The best part of 2 miles to the next signal. So I don't need to react to it at all. Yeah, I just need to remember that I passed one that was at yellow. Assuming that we're running on more or less on time, which I think we are. The next one should be a caution as well. It's just for crossing the track. I think. Well, actually, it might not be. It's got a bit further to go yet. Okay. That said, I've actually got up the mountain pretty quickly this time because we've got an AC 4400 pulling us along. Every other time I've done this, it's been in the SG40. So we will probably approach the next signal with a bit of caution. I would be more nervous if I was in a fully loaded train, because once you've got it stopped on this gradient, getting it going again is, well, it might not happen. You're not really meant to stop going up this hill. Yeah, Samson nails a point there. If you are kind of new to the game, the brakes will be the thing that will give you the biggest headaches, because there's so many different types of brakes. Apparently the rail industry never managed to agree on one and settle on it. And there are fairly legitimate reasons as well for all the different types of brakes. But the brakes will be your biggest headache learning this game, almost certainly. That or PZB. Honestly, PZB nearly broke me. I nearly finished with this game the first time I tried to learn PZB. Then I found out afterwards that the route I was trying to learn it on was absolutely broken, and I wasn't doing anything wrong after all. Well, I was doing loads of things wrong, but the things that were going wrong when I did it weren't really my fault. That was rapid transit back in the day. It just didn't work, but I didn't know that, and I got really angry with it quite a lot. But then they gave us Route Signord and PZB worked, and I thought it was kind of awesome. So I'm kind of bleeding off a bit of speed now, because I can't honestly remember what the sighting distance is like for this next signal. Some of the signals, the sighting distance is really crap, because in the SD40 and the GP, you've got like the way the windows are shaped and positioned, there's so much in your way you can't actually see around the corner properly. So you don't always see the signal until you've rolled out onto the straight fully. I've never gone past the red because of it yet, but I'm aware of the possibility of happening if you wait until you can see it to react. Oh, it's got a 10-mile-an-hour limit, so it is crossing us over. This must be the last junction before the mines. Right, so we're getting there. So we actually reached the crest of the mountain up here somewhere. We've not had a run by all stream. Why have we not had a run by this far into the stream? I've just realised. Oh yeah, Zed, you being on the wrong brakes on Transpennine could cause you all kinds of problems. Complicate that even more when you press the you turn the vacuum brake button without knowing which way to turn it and then get stuck. Did that to myself a few times back at the beginning. That was how I learned you always rotate it counterclockwise. Or it breaks. Well, it doesn't break, but it's such a pain in the ass to fix. You might as well just restart. Oh, I'm looking forward to Transpennine getting fixed. They do have a team seemingly. Really, that's their job, is to fix the miles flatten thing, but MTP with the new adhesion physics and the heavy freight pack. Oh, yes, please. Hell, I'm looking forward to Tees Valley. That's going to be awesome. That's like in the next tranche of stuff to come over. And I didn't really do many. I don't think I did that many Tees Valley streams. I certainly didn't do that much with the Class 20 or with the... What was the other one we got? Was it the 33 we got? For that. So yeah, the trains are longer. We might get a loading screen when I try to go back to the cab. That's how far away the front end of the train ends up when you do this. Even the longest Canadian Canadian sea, or you know the ones I'm talking about, the CN trains in Oakville were nowhere near this length. And remember, we drove past like another 3 or 4 of these coming up the way as well. Right, so I imagine we would want to do this bit as smartish as possible, because as long as we're on this line, we're holding up anything coming. I'm not sure when the next scheduled service is due. I think that there is actually a gap open to the timetable to allow for this sort of thing. We're doing it. While I just take a drink of my cold coffee that I forgot about. Much gentler gradient near the top as well. We're not quite at the top, but you see it's down to 0.5%. All your speed related worries are over at this point on the way up. We've done the difficult bit. I think I only had the alert go off only once when we up the mountain as well, so you're constantly driving the train. although it looks very much like you're just sitting burbling along for an hour and a half or however long it's been, probably getting closer to 2 hours by the time we're done, maybe even more. Although it looks quite pedestrian and like there's not a lot going on, I'm constantly being adjusting the controls, having to drive the thing the whole way up. All jokes aside about how crap some trains are at getting up the hill, that is generally going to be the case. The heavier trains have helper locomotives. If you know how to turn the banking controls on, you're going to be alright. So there is always something to do. It's not 2 hours of just trundling along at low speed looking out the window. No matter how much it looks like that's all I've been doing. So again, I really enjoy the route for that point of view as well. And going down the mountain and having to basically do the whole thing on dynamic brakes and air brakes, trying to stay below a speed all the time, that's even more hands-on. Right, we're over the peak now. I think we're heading downhill now. I thought the peak was further around. Huh. Up a little bit more. Still getting the hang of driving on the dynamic brakes so much. The brake system that very rarely needed used in Train Sim World 2020. It's one that you will use a hell of a lot on sand patch. Down at the side of the railway. All the blurring's gone as well. You still occasionally see it, but down down where the cursor is right now, that was an absolute mess in TSW 2020, without fail from every angle. Now it's the exception that very occasionally you'll see a flicker of it. Much better. Wheel blur still a thing as well, but again, it's nowhere near as. It's only the wheels that blur now. It's not like watching like the original cut of Star Wars where you can clearly see the Vaseline underneath the fucking land speeder. Like it was before. That was like horrible bad. Watching a video of a talent 2 from the cab. Oh, yeah, it's kind of cool, isn't it? When you're doing this whole simulation thing and then you start seeing stuff like that on the telly or the internet and you're like, oh yeah, I know what he's doing. Dynamic brake kind of goes from doing absolutely nothing at all to giving you quite a lot very quickly, very suddenly. Okay, we're nearly at the end of part 1 of the operation. This is the easy bit. Get it up the hill. Samson saying the dynamic is good as long as you're moving, useless to stop with. Yeah, it's very much a moving brake. it's not supposed to really do it isn't for stops. It is for things like speed holding and for you can use it for blended braking. You can use it to help the mechanical brakes as well to reduce wear and tear. But if you're trying to use it to stop, it means something went horribly, horribly, disastrously wrong somewhere. I love that radio chatter, man, that's so cool. Start paying attention up ahead because there is a signal in our near future. And I just saw some red through the trees. Should be able to stop quite comfortably if I need to. Ah, the red I saw was on the branch line that we're going down. Right, that's what I saw flashing through the trees. We've got yellow. But we're going to reverse up and couple onto that thing, which is going to lead the train down to the mine. Now, in real life, there would be a crew sitting on that thing just waiting for us to couple up, and then it would just be like switch off our end, they'd switch on their end. Train Sim World doesn't do that. So your choice is either to just couple up to it and reverse down, or shut down this end, leg it down to the other end, and then drive it down from the head there. Either is okay. It does take you quite a bit of time to run down the length of the train though. I should have probably been braking long before now as well. That actually stopped a lot more quickly than I thought it was going to. Right, okay. It certainly takes a lot longer to do it than the SD, that's for sure. The tricky part is reversing it down. What I do, because you would have an operation like this isn't just one or two drivers. There's like a platoon of guys in high-vis vests running about helping them out with this sort of stuff. And there would be a banksman down at the back with a radio. So we'll just we'll ride the external camera down on the outside of the rear car when we're going. Stop, 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 stop. Okay. Oh, need to put the power handle needs to be in the idle position or the reverser won't move. So into reverse we go. And let me just move the camera to somewhere a bit more comfortable. So what I would do is put a bit of power in before we release the brakes, because we're on a pretty steep hill. We should be okay because it's empties. We should be able to get underway with no problem. Not so easy with a full train to get started on a gradient like that. Manageable with this. Now, the other thing to be aware of is it says 0.6 miles. It is not 0.6 miles away, it's much closer. It is 0.6 miles away from where you are currently sitting in the driver's cab, but the train itself is the best part of half a mile long, so in fact the one vehicle is just round this corner, because that signal is guarding the branch line. So the thing I've got to be wary of here is I don't want to pick up too much speed. I'm going to struggle to lose it again. And it's easy because you can see that the back end, this back end we're at, is going to be going downhill, and you're going to be thinking in your head, I'm going downhill, and you're going to be braking and accelerating for downhill, but most of the train, oh you fucking bastard, I forgot to ask for permission there. Okay. That's not a disaster. That's completely my own fault for talking there. Yeah, you need to get permission to pass that signal. But all we were essentially going to do was couple up to that car and then back down the line into the siding. That was totally of my own doing. That's lack of paying attention. I've done that thing about 4 or 5 times. I bloody knew that I had to ask for permission to go past that signal. But the trick to remember there, if you're trying it yourself, is that although it looks like you're going downhill, you're still mostly going uphill. So try not to go slamming into the thing too hard. What time is it? 6:30. Right, I probably was only intending to do that first bit up. And to be honest with you, I kind of can't be arsed now after that. So yeah, that's a bit unfortunate, but hey, that happens. It's probably as good a place as any to call it, to be honest with you, because I'm kind of hungry. Aye, that was how you get round the problem with not being able to spawn into that scenario. Just start it on foot and you'll be good to go. And if you don't like the locomotive it gives you, just keep spawning till it gives you one you do like. Apparently that'll happen eventually. Um, the slow speed control won't make much of a difference, Samson. It's not as good as it is on the 37 on Tees Valley, for example. It's I find that it's because the train is so long and it's going uphill and downhill and it's pushing and it's pulling. I found that I still had to basically manage the speed myself, more or less, to a certain degree. It's possible there was something I wasn't doing properly. I'll give it that. Um, but I'm not convinced how much the slow speed control makes a difference back in that wee section up. It's worth a try though. If you find it works, let us know. Just remember, contact the signaller before you do. um, so yeah, that's where I'm going to call this one though, guys. I think. Sorry about the crap ending there. I didn't get to show you the very end. I'm not sitting doing all that again tonight. So I'm away to get something to eat. I did enjoy that by and large, apart from that wee bit at the end there. Thanks very much to you guys for joining in as well. I'll catch us all in the next stream, hopefully. Stay safe, guys. I'm out here.